Hello, good morning everyone. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Andy Christian and I'll be delivering today's session. So I've just turned on the screen sharing tool and the audio. So you should now be able to hear my voice coming through your telephone, your speakers or your headphones. And you should be able to see the Views login screen with my arrow moving around the screen. Now, if you do have any technical difficulties during the session, it's quite hard for me to help you directly as I'll be delivering the training. So what I've done is posted to everyone as a chat message the Substance Office number. So you should see that appear now in your toolbar. And if you do have any technical difficulties with the sound or the audio, if you give that number a call, then one of my colleagues will be happy to help. If anyone can't see that, that number is 0161 244 5418. 0161 244 5418. But give them a call and tell them you're on the webinar, and one of my colleagues can give you a hand. So, welcome to everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your morning to join us today. So this is the first in a series of complimentary monthly training webinars that we'll be running throughout 2019 for all Views users. The idea is that each month we'll cover a different specific topic on the system, and really the aim is to help users to increase their knowledge and their skills with the system. In future months, we'll be giving users the opportunity to vote for what topic they'd like to be covered. We'll be sending that out through our mailing list and our newsletter. So you'll be able to have an influence on what topics we look at each month. But we thought that it made sense to start for the first month with the absolute basics of the system. So we'll start with the real basic skills, logging into Views, starting to add contact records, create work, run simple reports, and then in future months we'll dig down into some of the more expert parts of the system. Now, in terms of the format for the session, the way that we'll try and organize it is it'll be 45 minutes looking at the specific topic, and then I'll demonstrate that. You should be able to see the View system in front of you and hear me explaining the various elements. And then in the final 15 minutes, there'll be the chance to ask questions. So if there is anything that we look at that you'd like to clarify or ask to look in a bit more detail, then I can help with that. If you do want to post a question, you can do that using the toolbar, which for me it appears on the right-hand side of the screen. There's a small orange arrow that opens out the toolbar, so you should see that somewhere on your screen. So let's start with the training then. So what we have in front of us is the Views login screen. So Views is an online reporting system developed by a research organization called Substance. And the system aims to give organizations really high specification tools to collect information about the work that they do, to collect evidence that supports that work, and then be able to organize that into shareable reports so that funders, potential funders, stakeholders are aware of the really good work that an organization is doing and the impact that it's having. The system itself is an online tool. So it's accessed via your web browser. You need to open up your internet browser, and then you need to go to the web address app.viewsapp.net. You can see in the top left of the screen here, app.viewsapp.net. In order to then access the system, you need a username and a password. So if you don't have these already, you need to speak to your administrator. If you're struggling to find that, then you can get in touch with us and we can help you. And I'll give you our contact details a little bit later in the session. But once you have your username and your password, you need to enter those into the username and password areas and then click login. And that will then take you to the Views home screen like we have in front of us. So this home screen is the dashboard from which you can get to all the other tools that the system has. So each organization will have a Views account, and then the people within the organization who need to access it will have a login. So you might have a login for the entire account. You might just have been given access to part of the account. We're going to use a demonstration account today. So some of the terminology, some of the areas might be slightly different from your own account because Views is a very flexible system, but the general principles will be the same. I'm sure you'll be able to use the same processes to collect data for your organization. Now, once you've logged in to the home screen, you then have across the top of the screen the various color-coded sections of the system. So these are the areas where you can get to all the different tools that your account has. And we'll be dipping into all of these at some point during today's session. But if I just give you an overview first of all. So if we first hover over contacts, in here we have a green area where you can collect records for people. So this is where the people that you work with can have a record in the participants database. It's also where the people who deliver and support the work can also have records. And they may be different kinds of people, but some examples might be staff, volunteers, or other external professionals involved in your work. After the green contacts area, you then have a purple work area where delivery is captured. So this is where all of the different projects, courses, types of work that you do can have a folder called a session group. And then all the times that you deliver those sessions, and they might be group sessions, one-to-one sessions, events, can be organized then into the session groups. So you're capturing all of your attendances and your outputs through the work section. You then have a blue area called evidence, which is where you can start to collect supplementary evidence. It might be in the form of media files. You might have photographs or videos or documents. It might be in the form of questionnaire forms or case studies, but they can then be uploaded and tagged against the people and the projects that you deliver. You then have an orange intelligence area, which is where you can start reaping the benefits of all the data that you've collected. So you can start to create statistic queries, set targets, and pull all of that data into shareable reports and exports. Finally, you have a My Account section, which is where you can manage things like your password and your user details. It's also where certain users of the account have access to an administration area. So only maybe 1 or 2 people per organization will have this, which is where they can set up and configure the account. So that's an overview of the layout of Views. So we'll start off with some of the basic processes. So for most organizations that use the system, one of the first things that they need to do on Views is add the people that they work with. So we're logged into the system, we're on the home screen, and we're going to hover our cursor over contacts. So you don't need to click on contacts, just hover the arrow over it and a menu will appear. And then from that menu, you want to choose the kind of person that you're going to add to the system. So we'll start off with a participant, so a person that we work with. So let's click on participants. The system will then give you a database of participant records. If your account is brand new, then it will be blank. If it's been used before by colleagues or yourself, then people will appear in the database. Now, just to mention as well, all of the people and the data that appears in this are fictional. There's no real people or real data that will show. But what we have here is some dummy participant records. But let's say you want to add a new person to the system. All you need to do is click on the plus icon. So plus on Views always means add, and that's how you add a record to whichever database you're in this case, participants. So we click on the plus button, and that will then open out for you your participant registration form. So this is where you would then fill in the data for the person that you want to add. And you'll notice that some of these fields are compulsory, so they have a red asterisks, which means you have to fill those in. So if a field has a red asterisk next to it, you can't skip that field. So I'll just fill in some fields as an example, and then click Save at the bottom of the screen. The screen will then flash and a record will have been created for that person. So it's very simple. Click plus, fill in the form, click Save, and you've added a person. Now, Views has some automatic fields. So you'll see if you put a date of birth in, you automatically see the age. And if you put in a postcode, you automatically see the ward and the local authority the person lives in. And you can click on the postcode and view a map of that area. Now, if you think of this as the front page of the person's record, this is where the core details are stored. But if you click on the arrow icon in the bottom left of the screen, you'll see that we have a submenu on the left-hand side, and this is available on virtually every screen of Views. And this is where additional data can be collected for this record. So this is kind of like the file dividers of the person's folder, or the extra things you might collect for them. So as you start working with the person and start adding session attendances, which we'll come to in a moment in work, as you start adding notes perhaps, or outcomes, or media files, whatever it might be, they will then get slotted into the section on the left-hand side. So we might, for example, add an address book entry for that person. And then that will get added into the person's record. So you see this is now part of the person's file. So you can build up quite a thorough record for each individual. If we hover over contacts and click on participants, our person has now been added to the database. So they're ready to start attending sessions and being worked with. Just a couple of other quick points about this database. If you need to find a record, very easy to do so. Just in the search bar on the top, just enter a name, and the system will do a check and find all the records that match that name. If you want to do a more complex search, then you have an advanced search at the top of the screen here. And if you click on that, you can then search for people based on multiple criteria. So you can search for people that match different search terms, and all the records will be found. If you need to edit a person's data, then next to each person's file on the right-hand side, you'll see a pencil icon. So the pencil icon always means edit, and that lets you update and change someone's details if you feel that they're incomplete or incorrect. So that's the participants database. Hopefully you'll see that it's very simple to use. You can add records, you can search for records, and you can click on them to open them, view the data, and click on the pencil icon to edit the record if you wish. Now, participants is just one of the databases under contacts. You also have other areas which might be labeled slightly different for some of you in your accounts, but the principle is the same. It's a place where you can log in and add records for different kinds of people. In this case, it's staff. For some of you, it might be coaches or delivery support workers, but these are the people who then are able to deliver sessions in the work area. So it's the same idea. You drop into the database, you click on the plus icon, and you fill in the form. And then you click Save, and a record is added to the database. And you can use that method to add any kind of contact record. So if you've grasped that element so far, you've started to look at adding people, then that's a really good start. You've now got the people that you're going to work with or deliver the work added to the system. And you're ready to move on to the delivery part of Views. So we've looked at the green contacts area, and we're now going to move into the purple work area. So this is where all of the sessions, attendances, the output information is recorded and available to report on. The first database we'll look at under work is a very simple database called venues. So if we hover over work and we click on venues. So basically any location that you deliver work from, any particular place, which might be a certain building, it might be a park, it might be a local area, needs to have a record under venues. So all your locations need to be in here. It may well be that the locations you need have already been added by a colleague or you've added them in the past, so you don't need to add them again. And you can, again, make use of the search tools to see if a venue is already on the system. But if it isn't, then it's the same principle. You just need to add the venue by clicking on the plus icon. And then you can fill in the details about the venue and then click save, and that will be added to the system. So that's the first part of adding work. You need to have locations onto views. Now the key area where all of the actual delivery is stored though, the most important section of the work area is the place called session groups. Now some organizations relabel this, it might be called service strands or projects, services, but it will appear as the first item in the work list. So if we hover over work, click on session groups. Now a session group is, the best way to think of this is it's a folder in which sessions are stored. So if you run sessions that are grouped together, for example, maybe they're part of the same course or part of the same project that you run or event, then you first create a session group to organize those sessions, and then you add the sessions, the actual dates and times to them. Just taking an example from our test account, so this organization delivers a youth club every Thursday night. So they first create a session group called Thursday Night Youth Club, and then they add sessions for each Thursday to that group. And then finally, they record the attendances. So they say, okay, well, on Thursday last week, 10 people attended, and tick them off. So I'll explain to you how that process works. So first of all, we need to add a session group. So if we click on the plus icon, so to add to a database, it's always the same method. Click on the plus icon. And then you'll be asked some basic details about the session group that you're creating. So first of all, you need to give the session group a title. So just something specific that will make it clear what it is. You might be asked some other questions. For example, you might be asked to allocate the session group to a particular department or program of work, depending on how your organization has set up your account. So you complete the fields. Finally, you'll be asked whether you want to add sessions or events to the session group. That will become clearer later. But basically, we have two different kinds of attendance that you can record on views. We have sessions where you create registers and you tick people off from your contacts database as attending to their sessions. And then we have events, which is where the attendance is simply collected as a head count. So you log in, and instead of adding people to the system, you just put numbers and say, okay, well, 55 people came today. So it depends. Some organizations might use different methods for different projects. So if you're not sure, speak to your administrator or the person who oversees your views account. But I'll show you both kinds of attendance as we look through the process. So if I click on save, you'll then be asked some basic questions about the session group in terms of how and where it's delivered. So you'll be asked which staff members are leading on the session group, and they'll be drawn from your contacts database under staff. So if the people you're looking for aren't in that list, you need to add them as a staff record. Then you'll be asked for the primary location. So this is the place where the sessions for this session group take place most of the time, might not be every session. So then you just need to choose the venue. And again, the venues list is drawn from your venue's database. So if it's not in the list, the venue you want, you need to add it to that database. You might be asked other questions depending on your setup. You may be asked if you want to use any particular forms on this work. You might not. So just complete the forms that will appear for your account and then click on Save. So what we've now done is we've created a session group. So a piece of work now sits in our session groups database. What we can then do is we can start registering people to that session group. So we can tell the system which people are signed up or likely to attend. If you don't know until the sessions take place, that's fine. You don't need to register people to the project first. But if you do, it will help you out when it comes to recording attendance. So we click on registered people on the left. And then what we can do is we can click on the plus icon and we can add people to the system just by searching for them and then ticking off their name. So I'm just going to add some of our made up people to the session so you can see how this works. So you can just put in a name and the system will do a check and will find the people. And then once you've found all the people that you want to add, just click on Associate and that will then associate all the people to that group. So the system now knows of all the participants in your database, these particular people are signed up or are going to attend on this project. So again, you might not know that straight away. You might only find that out after people start turning up. But as people become part of the work, you can associate them under the Registered People tab. You're now ready to start recording sessions. So these are the specific dates and times when, in this case, the Friday night project happens. You might deliver work that happens every day or more, maybe every month. But all you need to do is click on Sessions on the left. And then it will say there's no data because you haven't got any sessions yet. And you just need to click on the plus icon to start adding your sessions. And the process of adding sessions is then quite simple. You need to say what activity or activities that you'll be doing. And you need to say when and where the session happens. So I'm going to say, okay, well, mine started on Friday, the 4th of January at 4 o'clock, and it lasted for 3 hours, and it happened at this particular youth club. So you put in the basic details. If you just want to create one session, so you just want to create a single session, then leave the repetition as none and click Save, so no repeats. That's useful if it's quite an ad hoc piece of work that doesn't repeat every week, perhaps. However, if you deliver work that happens regularly, then all you need to do is under repetition, choose either a weekly or a monthly repetition. So you're saying, okay, this happens on a weekly or a monthly basis, and then click Save. If you do that, the system will then say, okay, well, it repeats weekly, but how often? And so you can actually say it repeats twice a week or every day of the week if you want, just by choosing the days. So I'm going to say mine happens on a Friday, and then you need to say how many sessions you want. So I'm going to say, okay, well, give me sessions, the next 12 sessions, please. Or you can do sessions up to a certain date. We then click Add. So some of you may be familiar with this process from using shared calendars, perhaps, but you're just creating a series of sessions. The dates will appear, and you can untick any that you don't want. So if some of those dates aren't suitable, they're not going to happen, then just untick them, and then click Confirm. And all of your sessions will now be created. So we've now created a session group and we've added sessions. So we've got the work and we've got all the sessions nicely set up. The final stage on Views for collecting delivery is you need to tell the system who attended on which sessions. And we have a really simple tool to do that called session attendances on the left-hand side. So we've added the session group, added the sessions. Now we click on session attendances, and the system's going to give us the ability to start recording our attendances. So you'll see now what we have is a table with each session listed and then all the participants listed down the left-hand side. If you want to tick someone in as attending, just change the cross to a tick. And you just click on the cross a couple of times and it will change into a tick. And that then records the person as attending. If you want the person to be recorded as having not turned up, just leave it as a cross. However, if you want the person not to be recorded as being part of the session at all, just change it to a square. So the square means not registered at all, the tick means attended, and the cross means not attended, DNA, didn't turn up. And you can either do that manually by clicking on each square, or you can click on the date to change it for the whole session, nice and quickly, or you can click on a person's name to change it for all that person's attendances. It's really quick and simple to start recording attendances at the session group. And that can include your participants, and you can add new participants just with the plus icon. So if you want to add a new person to this, then just do a search and associate them. And then you can start recording that person as attending. And you can also record attendances for other people, such as staff or professionals, just by choosing the relevant tab across the top. So if other people have turned up on the session group, such as staff, then you would just click on that element and then you can start recording those attendances. So what we have now is a piece of work. We have a set of dates and we have attendances. And as these sessions happen, some of these are in the future, we'd go in and we tick off the attendances. And we now have all of our attendance information collected. So I hope that process seems fairly straightforward. Under work session groups, we add a session group, we add some sessions and we record some attendances. And then we can register whichever participants attend on those sessions from our database. However, I mentioned that there is another kind of attendance that we have on the system called events. So it might be that for some of the work you deliver, it's not possible or practical to collect personal data for the individuals who attend. Maybe you can't collect their name and their demographic data because it's at a school or it's a very large session where you can't collect everyone's details. So Views has two kinds of attendance tools, one of which we've already looked at. That's the standard registration tool where you add sessions and then add people from your contacts database. Another tool we have that you might find useful for some or maybe lots of your projects is a tool called Events. And this is where you simply can put in the numbers of people who attended. So if we go back to our project that we created before, and we go back to our session list on the left. So we created a host of sessions earlier. But if we then click on Actions on the right, you'll see that as well as the option to add sessions, you also have the option to add events. If we click on Add Event, the questions that you're asked are very similar to the questions you're asked for a session. What are you delivering? when and where does it happen. So we'll put the date and the time. Now, as well as collecting the number of people who attended, you might also want to add some demographic data. So you can say, okay, well, so many people came and this was the breakdown of gender or the breakdown of ethnicity for those people. So if you do want to do that, just tick those options and then click Save. And you'll see now that instead of a register, instead of a place where we need to record the actual people who attended, events have a very simple attendance total sheet where you can simply say, okay, well, 65 people came. This was the split of gender. This was the split of ethnicity, etc. And you can then record all the details. Click Save, and you've collected your event data for that work. So that's a real simple process for collecting headcount information. Okay, so just to recap, we've looked at the contacts database of views. We've looked at how to add people to the database. We then looked at adding venues and adding work, so session group, sessions, attendances, and there are two different kinds of attendances you can collect. So I hope that seems fairly straightforward for everyone. The next thing we're going to have a look at is collecting evidence. So Views has different tools for collecting evidence on the system. One of the most simple is a tool to upload media. So it might be that through the course of the work that you do, you take some photographs, maybe you record a video, or you have some signed information that you want to scan and upload. So Views makes it very simple for you to upload files and store them securely and access them when you need to. If you hover over Evidence and click on Media, and then if you click on Actions and Upload File, you can then put the title of the file you're uploading. You can browse for the file, and that will open up your hard drive, and you can simply choose the file you want to upload. So it's really simple to upload a file on Views. And that will then exist on the system, in this case just an example photograph. Then what you can do is you can link that file to records within the system using the Associations tab. So let's say you want to tag the project that this file relates to. Click on Associations on the left. Manage Associations on the right-hand side. And then you can associate the record with different kinds of, associate the media with different kinds of record in the system. So let's link it to a piece of delivery that we've done. So what that means now is if we were to go and find a project in the session groups area, we can then click on Media on the left-hand side, and we can see all the files that relate to that project. In this case, we have a photograph. So it's a really useful way of storing files, and they can be linked to projects or to specific people if you wish. We also have tools to record achievements that people make. So we've looked at media. You can also go to a particular person. Click on their name. So this is any person in the database. And then, so we talked a bit earlier about each person having a section down the left-hand side of different items that you can collect for them. One of those sections is called Outcomes. And if you click on Outcomes, and then you click Add, then you can add outcomes to a person's record. You can link it to particular projects, and then you can choose the outcome that the person's achieved. And the outcome list will change depending on which account you're using, but that will then link to their record. So you can add outcomes to a person's file. You can also add qualifications. So if someone achieves an accredited outcome, just click on qualifications on the left, click on the plus icon, and then you can record a particular achievement the person's made. And again, the list of qualifications will change depending on which account you're using. So then you'll now have both an outcome and a qualification linked to the record. So there are, again, different kinds of evidence that you can start to collect. Media files, outcomes, qualifications. One other type of evidence you can add to the system are questionnaires. So it might be that your account also, you make use of forms. So it's very simple to click on questionnaires within a person's file and then add a form to their file. So click on answer and then choose a particular form that they have completed and log it against their record. And that will then record their responses. So that's a different kind of evidence that you might make use of. And again, we're covering all the elements that you might choose to use. Some organizations might focus more on some evidence than others. They might not collect media, but they collect forms, or they collect outcomes, but not qualifications. But all of those options are available within the Views account. The final area under evidence to mention, and then we'll move into the intelligence section, is a case studies tool. So it might be from time to time that some interesting stories come out of the work that you've done, and you want to write those up in a way that you can then later share using the account. So if you hover over evidence and you click on case studies, then you can add a case study using the plus button. And the system gives you a word processing tool that allows you to start writing a case study. So you can write text. And you can also, so we'll make it full screen with the full screen button. You can also drop in media directly from your account. So you can start to pull in photographs, you can start to pull in videos, links to particular online media, and then you can save your case study, and you can begin to start turning it into a shareable PDF if you wish, or you can share it online. Okay, so we've now looked at the basics of contacts, work, and evidence. We're going to finally look at the basics of running a report under the intelligence area. So if you want to run a simple report, the best way to get started is to hover over intelligence and click on statistics summaries. These are the easiest way to begin reporting on views. We have more complex tools where you can create queries and build templates, which we'll come to, I'm sure, at later sessions this year. But the easiest way to get started is to hover over intelligence, click on statistics summaries, click on the plus icon, and then choose one of the reports that appears. So different accounts will have different reports depending on your setup, but all accounts will have these basic reports that we have in front of us. Some good ones to get started with. The participant attendance one is very handy. If you click on generic participant attendance, you can then pick a particular project or piece of work you've done to report on. So you can choose one of these, and then you can choose a time frame. So you can say a particular financial year, academic year, or you can put in particular dates you want to look at. Click apply. And then the system will run instantly a report for you. So Views has a number of statistic queries pre-built, so you don't have to do any work, just run the report and all of these statistics will come out. And the attendance one gives you lots of useful data around attendance, numbers of unique people, new people, sessions, attendances, hours, averages. And then it will start to break down your demographics. And where possible, the system will provide charts. So you can run a report on the statistics summaries really quickly and easily. And there are other reports that you might want to try. The participant report is very useful, so you can just change the statistics summary that shows, and then you'll get a different kind of report. And these all have charts linked to them where available. So that's just intelligence statistics summaries. Click on the plus icon and then choose your report from the list. And then put your filters on and click apply. And 4 or 5 clicks, you've got a really good report directly from the system, and that will draw from all the other elements that you've collected in the other sections. Okay, so that's a real kind of whistle-stop tour of getting started with the basics of using Views. We've looked at adding people under contacts, adding delivery under work, different kinds of evidence you can collect, media, outcomes, qualifications, and then finally we've looked at running a simple report under statistics summaries. Now, I'm happy to answer any questions that people have. If you have any questions at all about the system, then please feel free to post those using the toolbar. And then in the final quarter of the session that we've got left, I'd be happy to answer questions. Maybe just while you're typing or thinking of those, just to mention a few final basic things that are important to know. When you finish with the system, you always want to log out. So just hover over My Account and click on Log Out. So My Account, log out, and that will log you out of the system. And then you can always log back in if you need to, like I'm going to now. Okay, so I've had a couple of questions come in, and one was a nice easy one. Can we get a copy of this webinar? You can. So I should have said actually earlier that we're going to record all of these webinars, upload them online, and then we'll share the links. I'll check with my colleague in the marketing department how they're shared. I presume it will just be done through the mailing list, but however you heard about the webinar, we'll share the link as well. Okay, so someone said, so I've had a few really good questions from people. If someone stopped attending a particular session group, is it possible to remove them from the register? Or would that lose the historical data of their attendance in the past? No, you can remove someone from a session group without losing their historical attendance. If you hover over work and go to session groups, and then click on a session group, then click on registered people on the left. What you can do is you can delete someone from the register for this session group. So registered people, delete the person off, with the dustbin on the right, and that removes them from the session. It doesn't delete all their historic attendance. All the past stuff remains and can be reported on, but they'll stop appearing on future registers. So future sessions you create, they'll no longer appear. Okay. So someone said, what does the green V mean next to a participant name? So that means that the person is a volunteer. So if anyone has a green V, at first everyone thinks that means they're a vegetarian, but it doesn't. So what that means is that participant also has done some volunteering. So if you click on the person's name and click on volunteering on the left, you'll see that this participant has done some volunteering, and you can add new instances of volunteering from here as well. So the idea is that a participant can also be a volunteer, as we know lots of organizations have people who do both. Okay, so someone said, how does an active participant become an inactive participant? Is it manually done by us, or is it done automatically by attendance? Now, that's a good question. So essentially, it's a process that's done manually by the organization. We do have some tools under intelligence that let you mass archive and people, so you can make people inactive in a big, large group. But I guess for the purpose of today, just to mention, you can manually make people inactive by next to their record on the far right, just next to the delete button, you'll see an archive button. And if you archive someone, it doesn't delete their data, but it makes them inactive. So all that means is it hides them. So it's a way of keeping your system nice and up to date and current. So the person will then be made inactive. Seem to have slightly gone offline, but I'll just let that. Hopefully I'm still online and you can still hear me, but just while that's loading, just come back to your questions. Okay, so someone said, how can you remove a session or change a session when it's been recorded? So that's a good question. So if you hover over work and click on session groups, and then click on a session. So click on a session group, sorry, and then click on sessions on the left. You have the option to edit. So if you click on the pencil icon next to any session, you can edit the details. You can change the time, the date, the duration, the activity. And then if you click on the dustbin icon, you can delete a session. So you need to be an administrator to delete, but that allows you to completely remove a session. Okay, someone said, can we print off a register? Yeah, that's a good point. So if you hover over work, click on session groups, click on a session group. On the left-hand side, you'll see a tab called registers. So if you click on registers, you can then choose which dates you'd like to put on the register just by ticking them. And then click on save, and the system will print out your register for you. So you get a PDF that looks like this that you can print, and that will have your people and your session dates on there. Okay, so someone said, what does the favorites option do? So what the favorites option does is it makes it easy to find records that you personally need to access most frequently. So if there are certain session groups that you work with a lot, if you hover over work and click on session groups, all you need to do is click on a session group, and then under the star button, just click on the star, and that favorites that record. Now, all that means in practice is, let's say you're an organization that delivers hundreds of projects, and many Views organizations do. Instead of having to sift and search through all those hundreds, just click on favorites, and all your favorite records then will appear, will come up in the list. So it makes it quick to, like, it's a way of building up a list of the records you want to access most frequently. You can do that under work, you can do that under contacts or any database on the system. Okay, come back to the list of questions. Okay, someone said, please could you show me the best back button? So we've recently updated Views. For those of you who've used the system for a while, you'll have noticed it looks a lot better these days. We used to have on the old version a back button within the system, but often caused difficulties, so we removed it. Now, if you want to go back, I guess there are different ways of doing so. If you just want to move back to the previous page, you can use the browser back buttons, and I often do, and they will work. Occasionally it'll say, are you sure we want to reload a form? And you have to click yes, but the browser back buttons will work most of the time. You'll notice also, though, that the system at the top gives you the pathway that you've just followed, so you can go back along the pathway just by clicking on the relevant item in the list. So that's also a way of going back on the system. So someone said, how do you add categories for activities? So I guess there are different ways of grouping your work on the system. If I'm understanding rightly, if you wanted to say group these pieces of work, so you've got coaching courses, events, multi-sport projects, etc. If you want to categorize those, the easiest way to do so is to create what we call agency projects on the system. So if you hover over work and click on agency projects, you can then create categories in a sense. So you can say, okay, well, these are courses, these are tournaments, these are youth clubs, these are advice sessions. You can add these in. And then when you add session groups to the system, you'll be given the option to then categorize the work in that way. So that's a way of categorizing your delivery if you need to. Someone said, can Views generate person ID rather than entering manually? So yeah, so Views does generate an ID number for every person. So if you drop into the database and you click on a person's name, you'll see that the person at the top has an ID, and that's generated automatically. As soon as you add the record, that's put into the system, so their person ID 7, and it also shows at the toolbar at the top. So every record on Views has an ID number that displays instantly. Someone said, can session groups be allocated to more than one agency project? They can. So if you add a session group or you edit a session group, then you'll have the option to tick more than one. I think here it's been relabeled as programs, but it's the same thing. So you can put one against more than one category if you need to. Okay, I think there was another question I missed. I'm just looking back up the list. Someone said we have an ongoing session. Is there a way of refreshing the participants each year without deleting, as we now have a build-up from 5 years ago? Yeah, I mean, there are different ways of doing this. I mean, you can keep session groups going as long as you want to. So if you want to keep a particular session group going over years, you can. Some organizations prefer to archive them maybe after each year, but you don't have to. However, you're right, you will start to build up a big long list of people over time. The best way of managing that is similar to what we were looking at before, is if you go to registered people on the left, if you just go through and then deregister everyone, so you just need to remove all the people basically from the list at the end of the year. If you then create next year's sessions, all those people won't appear on the registers. So all their past stuff will stay. But if you remove them from registered people and then create your sessions, it takes them off the list. So that's a way of not having to then deal with the people who no longer attend. So if you deregister everyone, that's one way. Alternatively, you could choose to create a new session group each year, and it might be an option. Yeah, currently, someone's just said, do you need to do that on a one-by-one basis? You do. We're looking at some ways of improving the ways that people are registered to make that a bit quicker. So that is going to change over the next few months. But at the moment, you need to cancel them off each time. Okay, just in the last couple of minutes, I'll just see if there are any more questions. So someone said, in regards to qualifications and outcomes, who adds those? Is it someone at Views or the admin for the account? So it's the admin for the account. So you can have whatever qualifications or outcomes that you want, but it does need to be one of the admins who sets them up. All they need to do, without going, we haven't got time to go into the detail, but if they drop into administration, they'll find an outcomes and qualifications tab on the left, and they can come in here and they can add new qualifications and new outcomes. So it's the administrator, and you can have as many as you want. Okay, well, I think we're running out of time. Apologies if I've missed any questions. I think I've got through all of them. But otherwise, thank you very much to everyone for attending. Really appreciate your time. If you do need further support on the system, if you hover over my account, click on support. Then you'll find we've got support guides, video demonstrations. We've also got a support address. So if you do have questions later on, you think, oh, how do I do that? Or what was that thing about reports or something? Drop us an email, support@viewsapp.net. One of my colleagues will be happy to get back to you. Someone's just said, what's the topic for the next webinar? So I think I'll check with my colleagues who are organising it, but I think the plan is we're going to put a poll out in the next mailing list, and you can vote, and then whichever gets the most votes will be the next topic. But I'll confirm that. Whether we'll do that for the next one, I'm not sure. But if you do have any ideas in the meantime, send us an email and we can take that into account if there are specific things you really like to do some more training on. But otherwise, thank you to everyone. We had a really good attendance. I think we've got about 60 people on the session, which is great. I'm sure we'll be getting good numbers over the course of the year. We'll send out the video subsequently, and you can share that with colleagues, or you can revisit any of it yourself. But thanks to everyone for attending, and I'm sure we'll speak again in the future. That concludes the Views training webinar.